someday I might want to do something. He's like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's going to be something and I want to be ready for that. And maybe this will lead to that. But I honestly had no idea it would lead me to becoming a fabric designer or a fashion designer. I really didn't. I just was like, that's why I tell people just like, where do you find joy? Go with that, because it can lead to something. And for me, it did. I just kept doing what came naturally. And when something was presented to me, I took the opportunity, whether I felt ready for it or not.
You're listening to the Big Ideas Podcast with Ashlee Ilg. Tune in for honest conversations as we pursue bold dreams, redefine what is possible, and empower the next generation to live big. You'll hear stories that prove over and over again that just because something wasn't a part of our plan doesn't mean it won't be used for our good. Whether you're already an entrepreneur, you dream of becoming one, or you're raising the next generation of entrepreneurs, this podcast is for you. There's no time to waste on your big ideas. So let's get started. Here's your host, Ashlee Ilg.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Big Ideas Podcast. I am so excited for this season, like I mentioned before, but this episode is going to be so fun. I have a really fun and colorful, literally, guest joining us today. This is Katie Kortman, and I have to give you a little background on her and our friendship because it's kind of unique. But Katie and I met in high school. We did not go to the same high school, but we had a really great mutual friend. Katie went to the School of the Arts in our city, and I went to our public school, and we just crossed paths, and we were instant friends, had all the reasons to hang out, all the fun high school days. It's been really fun just from high school, and then as young adults, we reconnected in Atlanta, and then her husband's military career and just different family priorities have taken her all over the country, all over the world, and we're back in the same country now, but in different time zones. And this podcast has just been a really fun excuse to catch back up. And I'm so excited to share her wisdom, her perspective, her outlook on life, and really her journey of entrepreneurship and how it all just happened. I mean, it's one of my most favorite entrepreneurial journeys, inspirational, wow, this is amazing how this all transpired kind of stories. And so without further ado, welcome to the show, Katie Kortman.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes.
It's fun to think about how long we've known each other.
I know.
And yeah, just following each other, just seeing from afar what's been going on. It's been fun to watch your life journey as well.
Oh, well, thank you. So we are going to just kind of hop right in. So, Katie, you've been an artist ever since I've known you. Like I said, we met when you were at the School of the Arts. And so maybe tell us a little bit, just kind of getting us going, because we'll get into what exactly you do and where this conversation's going to go with, your whole journey of entrepreneurship and where your companies are at now and for the future and things like that. But, when you were younger, at what point did you know that not only do I love art, but I'm actually really good at it? When did you maybe start calling yourself an artist or pursuing those artistic talents?
When I was in elementary school, I got into a bunch of art shows, and I actually remember this one drawing, and I still have it, where I had to draw a giraffe, and I was looking at a picture of a giraffe, and I was in second grade, and it was so good. It looked like that giraffe, and I remember looking at it and being like, I did that, and I was so proud of it. And it got into this show at the Four Arts Society in Palm Beach, and I don't think I called myself an artist then, but I knew I had talent. And then, just in sixth grade, I tried out for the School of the Arts and got in. And then that just, put me on that path to being an artist.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, I didn't even kind of give your credentials with what we're talking about here, but I mean, you own Katie Kortman Art, Katie Kortman Clothing. And like I said, we're going to get into all of that, but, you are a professional artist at this point. You've started out, being in art shows as a young, elementary age child. And obviously there's a lot in between there. And I think it's really important because I hear this a lot, especially in the creatives space, where people automatically count themselves out for being creative, where they're like, well, and I honestly, I feel like you are probably the epitome of who people would consider creative. You paint, you put things together and they look better than they did before. You have a vision that you bring to life, you literally are the visual artist. And I think there's a lot of people out there that would be like, they would call themselves like, I'm not creative. And you probably hear that too, like, oh, I wish I was as creative as you, or I wish I was creative like you. And I think I hold fast to the idea that everybody is creative. Everybody was created to create, and it might not look like paint on paper or fabric or sewing things or writing things or speaking or writing songs or whatever. But there's this whole element of like, how are we all creative, you know? And I didn't prep you on this question at all. And I would just love your perspective on, like, to the person listening who's like, that's awesome. I'm so inspired by her creativity, but I'm not creative in any way. So like, maybe what would you say to somebody listening to encourage them in their creativity, however that looks?
I agree with you. I think people are creative in different ways. I think about my daughter, who she is creative, like in the same way visually, she can do visual creative things, but she also thinks outside the box and she comes up with interesting solutions to things. Or when we read something, you know, if we're reading the scriptures or something, she will think of something in a different way, or she'll make a connection that I didn't see. And so I think, like you said, like people can be creative in all different ways, and just figuring out what is it that you love to do? What is it that you like maybe have seen in your life that came naturally to you? Those are the things where you probably are creative and just aren't thinking of it as being creative. I don't think people realize that that is also creativity, because mostly what society tells us is creativity is the arts. The arts. But it is so much more. And I think that's why when I taught high school art. I told my students, like, you might not end up being an artist, but learning how to think outside the box, learning to come up with different solutions and not be what a computer is. Like, we're humans, so we're not computers. What can we do that a computer can't? That's what a business wants. That's what companies want. They want people that can think outside the box. So I don't know what to say exactly, but just to look for where you find passion, what you find joy in. That's probably where you are creative, even if you're not thinking of it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that so much. And I forgot that you taught art as well. And as a mom myself too, I mean, I can think of so many examples, like exactly like you were saying. I mean, you've got these children looking up to you, like, tell me I'm creative. You know, they're not really saying that, but they're like, tell me all the ways I'm special. Tell me all the unique gifts I have, you know, and it's all those ways that they think outside the box, or they solve something differently than somebody else, or whatever it might be. So yeah, I love that. I just wanted you to say that because I feel like you've got the credibility to say, like, I am the epitome of creative, but let me tell you by you also. And I don't mean like on a pedestal. I just mean like from the world's viewpoint of what creative is, you know. And so for you to acknowledge it, I think that's super cool. Okay, so let's get into, speaking of thinking outside the box and creating something that nobody has seen before. And I mean, what you were literally just saying, I'm like, oh man, this is such a good piece to your story, because you were like, you know, artists can solve problems and they can, not to keep using the same phrase, but thinking outside the box. And so kind of walk us through, you know, this story of, you know, you and Frank and your kids had, I think you were overseas at this point. Correct me if I'm wrong. When sort of that, I'm going to make my clothes, all the family's clothes, and kind of what transpired out of that. Like, talk us through that whole scenario of what has led you to your clothing line.
Okay, so actually, if you go back to high school, I really loved fashion.
Yep.
And then when I went to college, I was a graphic design major, but really wished that they had a fashion design program. But I went to Brigham Young University. They had just phased it out and they didn't have one. And I switched to painting. I liked being hands-on more than at a computer. But I did all my paintings of dresses because I was like, well, I can't sew the clothing, so I'm going to paint clothing.
I love that.
And then they did have some beginning sewing classes and stuff. And so I took some of those. So I learned some basic skills in sewing. But over the years, working for Anthropologie as a display artist and watching Project Runway, I would get really inspired and I would try to like make my own clothes with the little knowledge I knew of how to sew clothes. And then when I had kids, it was like they're so much easier to sew for. They don't have as many things to flatter, that uses less fabric. I would mostly, and my husband was in medical school, so I didn't have as much money. And so it was great. I could use my old clothes, my husband's old clothes, and we could make them into small little clothes, or it didn't use up as much fabric. And so it was really fun to make these clothes for my kids. And so I gained a lot of skills just sewing for them. And then in 2018, I had listened to the podcast, Gretchen Rubin's Happier podcast. And she had talked about, she and her sister would do this like 17 things for 2017. And it wasn't 17 goals that like, oh, lose weight and, those kind of goals. It was more like, what are 17 things that would make me happy in 2017? And so she was going to do the same thing for 2018. And I was like, I want to do that for myself. I love making goals, but I really wanted to make things that would bring me joy, a list of things that brought me joy. So I made 18 things for 2018. I kept that. I still have that paper. And the things on that paper that I wrote, those goals that I achieved that year, like seriously changed my life.
Wow.
And on there, a few of the things were I wanted to only sew my own clothing because I thought I was going to buy no clothing. If I only sewed my clothing and didn't buy anything and committed not to buy anything, then I would have to learn how to make everything. I would have to learn how to make a bathing suit and a jacket and just everything. And I really wanted a challenge to do that. And then another thing on there was I wanted to make some more paintings. And another one was to learn how to design fabric. And I had in college, my professors told me that my paintings are very abstract. They would be amazing fabric. They knew I liked fashion. And I almost tried to go get a master's in fabric design.
Okay.
And print textiles. But at the very last minute, one of my letters of recommendation had fallen through. And so I ended up not applying. And it was something that for years, I wished I knew how to do. And the more I learned how to sew, the more I wished I could design my own fabric. So, because then it would be like this full circle of wearing my art. And so over the course of that year, I was making my clothing and posting it on Instagram. I started posting it on my art Instagram, where previously I had just been putting my paintings. That's why it's Katie Kortman Art. And I was noticing that people were like posting pictures of the clothing they made, but just very serious pictures. And I was like, there should be more joy. Like, this is so exciting. We made something. It looks good. For years I'd made clothing that when I put it on, I'm like, oh, that doesn't really look good. But like when you make something and it looks good, it's so exciting. And so I started dancing and filming these little dances. And this is 2018. So it was for TikTok. And I got other people to do it. I made these challenges. So I gained a little bit of like followers, and people kind of started to know who I was. So I was trying to get everybody to dance in their handmade clothing. I started something called the Handmade Hustle.
Yep.
And then during that year, I also wanted to learn how to design my fabric. So I had that. It was the last thing on my 2018 list that I had not accomplished. It was like November. There was this contest to make sew frosting is what it was called. Like make something for yourself that's like not everyday clothing, fancy. It was kind of right before the holidays. And I thought, well, I'll use that challenge. I'll join that challenge and I'll use it as a deadline to design my own fabric. But I didn't have time to learn how to do it digitally, which is really what I was trying to learn how to do. So I just painted fabric. I had a huge piece of wool that somebody had given me, white cream wool, and I painted it. I took it to my kids' robotics tournaments. I was just bringing that thing and just painting it wherever I could, fitting it into my life because it took a lot of hours to paint that fabric. And then I sewed it into this dress and I won the contest. And all of a sudden I got like overnight, like 1,000 more followers, which on Project Runway, they edit that to make it sound like I said, I got 32,000 followers overnight, but FYI, not what they edited that weird.
That's amazing.
Anyway, 1,000 more followers overnight. And some companies approached me over the following weeks about designing fabric. So then I was like, okay, I'm not going to tell them that I don't know how to design fabric. I'll just say yes, and I'm going to learn how.
Yeah.
So over Christmas break, I was like, oh, when my in-laws were visiting and stuff, I'm like, you guys play with the kids. I'm sitting at my computer. I'm learning how to design fabric during these 2 weeks that we have off. And I did. And I got this ambassadorship with Spoonflower, and I sold 3 designs to another fabric company. And that got me more like attention, which then led to me teaching how to wear color, how to paint on fabric, all these classes I was teaching on the East Coast. Then over the course of time also led to Project Runway reaching out to me. The casting people called me up. I don't know how they got my phone number. Somehow they found me.
They have ways.
They found me on Instagram, somehow found my phone number and called me up. I thought it was a prank call, but it wasn't. And I was at this thing where I asked them, I said, do you know that I'm not a fashion designer? And they said, that's okay. And I said, I sew my own clothes and I design fabric. And they're like, yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, we want you to audition. And I was like, you want me to audition? I've watched this show since the beginning,
Yeah.
Everyone that would see it and knows me would be like, you should audition. I'm like, you guys, I don't know how to design from scratch. I only know how to use a pattern. Like I could do kids' clothes, maybe. I don't know how to design something really. And, but I didn't want to tell Project Runway that.
Yeah.
So I started the audition process and they liked me enough that I kept making it to more interviews, asking to be interviewed more. And when it got to this one point, I either they told me I was going to have to go to New York and present a collection, or I had a feeling that was going to happen. I can't remember, but I thought, okay, I have to take this seriously. So I ordered a textbook off of Amazon. I ordered a dress form and I had 2 weeks to make a collection of 3 outfits to bring to New York to the judges to see if they would pick me to runway. And I didn't want to bring a single thing that I had made from an existing pattern because then I didn't want to lie.
Yeah.
So I made this whole collection. And then the day that I was supposed to go to New York was the day that everything shut down in the pandemic.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know this part.
Yeah. So I didn't get to go to New York, but I had the interview virtually. And I could tell that the guy really liked, it was Daniel Vosovic. He was from season 2, I think. I could tell he really liked me. We were vibing. He seemed to like, what I showed him. And it's funny because from the beginning, I just had this feeling that I was actually going to go on the show because it just kind of kept falling into my lap. I'm like, I don't know why this is happening. But okay,
Yeah.
And then the show got shut down indefinitely because of the pandemic. I moved to Japan and I didn't think it was going to happen. So I just went right back to using patterns, not trying to design from scratch and just doing my thing. I started selling fabric in Australia and all over the world. I got a collection at Amazon and fabric.com. And I kind of was just doing what I had been doing and blogging and getting, sponsorships. But then Project Runway reached back out and they said, we think we might be filming this coming summer. Would you still be interested? And I wasn't sure. I was interested, but I didn't know how I could possibly make it happen. But my husband was like, sorry for that, Dean. My husband was like, you have to do this. Like, we will figure out a way. And Japan had closed borders. They were not going to let anybody in. So I didn't know who was going to watch my kids. My husband works over 100 hours a week. So I was just like, I don't know how we can possibly make this work. But anyways, I said yes. One thing led to another. 2 weeks before, they said, you're coming on the show. But luckily, in the meantime, I had been like acting as if I was going to get on the show in case.
Right.
And so I had a bunch of friends who I'd just met there in Japan who said, we'll help watch your kids. My husband had 12 24-hour shifts that we had to have child coverage for. My kids were young, so we had to get them a cell phone and we had to teach them how to, luckily it was Japan. It was super safe. They could walk to 7-Eleven and get food when my husband wasn't home for dinner yet. And I paid somebody to watch my youngest kid during the day. And anyway, it was a lot of coordination, but I got on the show and I thought to myself, back in my 20s, I had really wanted to have my own fashion line. I had dreamt of what that would be like. But over the course of living and having kids and moving, that dream had long since gone. And I was just happy making my own clothes. But I didn't think I would ever have my own fashion line. So I stopped thinking about it. And, I don't know if you remember, but in Atlanta, I'd had a hair accessory business. Yes. But I didn't know how to progress that one either. That one had gotten really big to the point where I needed to manufacture, but didn't know how to do that. So I just quit. And I was also having a bunch of kids. But so when I went to Project Runway, I thought, this is my chance. If this goes well, if I win, I will become a fashion designer. I'll do it. And they'll show me how. That was my plan. But then I didn't win, which I thought God was giving me this opportunity and then I was going to win, but I didn't. What?
What is the point about this? Yes. Where do I go now? Yeah.
But while I was there, I did talk to all the fashion designers and I said, how do you run your business? How do you, what do you do? How do you manufacture? Where do you find manufacturers? And I just and any of the downtime we had, I was just finding out how they each did it. And they each did something different. So it was really good for me to learn what a fashion designer can be, because it doesn't have to just be this one thing. And I took that knowledge with me. I was very devastated. I had a lot of nightmares after Project Runway, but it was still a really great experience. And I knew that it was going to be the most publicity I would ever have. And if I wanted to launch a fashion line, that now was the time to do it. So the moment I got back to Japan, I started contacting manufacturers. I started like figuring everything out, ordering labels, like everything. And my kids were a little bit neglected that summer, and we ate a lot of like prepackaged food, but like I was able to launch my business by the time Project Runway aired October 15th or whatever it was. I had a website and it did really well because there was stuff for people to buy right away.
That's amazing.
So that's my story.
Yeah.
I mean, in a nutshell.
Yeah. And your kids are fine.
And my kids are fine. Yeah.
And also
figured out, it's been like a real journey figuring out how to balance everything. And everything's obviously not perfectly balanced, but like just how to be a good mom and not feel bad about that, how to give some time in my business. I've pulled back a little bit from my business and just been like, whatever it is right now is what it is, because right now my kids really need me. So,
Yeah, we talked on the last episode, and I think I've shared with it. I know I've written stuff about balance, the false idea that there is somehow going to be balance. I think I say like balance schmalance, like it's just that it doesn't exist, and it's okay. So also shout out to the husbands who tell us you got to do it. I mean, I have several stories where I'm like, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work. How is this going to work? And Andy goes, you just have to go. Like, we'll figure it out. And I'm looking back, I'm like, I'm just so glad you forced me. Like you not forced, but like encouraged and like helped make it happen, because they just know.
I'm like held back by all the logistics of how to make it happen. But he's like, what? Don't say no. We'll figure it out. And he's done that more than once. He is a little more like carefree and just, I'm more type A. He's a little less type A. So it helps me, when I'm held back by like, I don't know how we're going to make this work. It's like, just do it.
Yeah. And then you look back and you're like, of course it was going to work out. It's exactly how it was supposed to go. Yeah. And God's like, see, I still lined up all the pieces. See, there was more to learn in that journey. Like it's not, you didn't have to rely on them. Like you can pave your own way here. That's what we keep doing. So I love that. Yeah. That it's so cool. So when you were designing, clothing for your kids, I mean, in the back of your mind, did you have, I know like you had dreamt about like designing your own fashion line. Project Runway was, like your all-time favorite. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but like you loved watching it. It was inspiring. So were you just kind of nonchalantly making clothes for your kids, or was this like, this might go somewhere?
No, I didn't think it would go anywhere, but it was really fun because I felt like I didn't have the skills at that time to make those kind of clothes for myself, but I could be really creative with their clothing. And I remember I would make that and be like, I wish I had that for me, but I don't actually know how to make this for me and fit my boobs and all that. And even when I started posting on Instagram, I remember somebody asking me, and I was starting to like really express myself and do all these weird dances and put on all this weird makeup, and I was having so much fun. And I remember someone saying, or maybe it was my husband being like, do you have a plan, or is this trying to go somewhere? And I also was making some money, but he was like, why don't you put that in our family bank account? And I said, no, I'm going to keep that in PayPal because someday I might want to do something. He's like, what are you trying to do? I'm like, I don't know, but I feel like there's going to be something and I want to be ready for that. And maybe this will lead to that. But I honestly had no idea it would lead me to becoming a fabric designer or a fashion designer. I really didn't. I just was like, that's why I tell people just like, where do you find joy? Go with that, because it can lead to something. And for me, it did. I just kept doing what came naturally. And when something was presented to me, I took the opportunity, whether I felt ready for it or not.
Hey friend, I wanted to take a quick pause to ask if you've taken the quiz yet to find out what type of dreamer are you. It's super important to discover what's working for you, but also some things that may be keeping you from really pursuing your greatest purpose. It takes just 2 minutes to find out if you're the skimboarder, the sunbather, the sandcastle builder, or the surfer babe. So jump over to dreamerquiz.com and be sure to share your results and tag me in it. Now back to the show.
I was saying to someone recently, I was like, can I just be given an opportunity in something I already am good at instead of something where I'm having to learn how to do the thing to be good at? I feel like I'm constantly giving something where it's pushing me, it's challenging me, it's making me grow. But man, I would just love an opportunity where I'm already like, oh, that's so easy. I can already do that in my sleep,
Yeah, but I would say, as somebody like listening in or like looking in from the outside, I would say the opportunity was totally in your wheelhouse. I mean, yes, you had to learn a ton. I'm not trying to water that down, but it's definitely using, like your God-given existing gifts and talent,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, but I did go to Project Runway feeling like I knew that I knew the least there. I
Yeah.
knew, and you can tell when you watch the episodes that I like lose some of my confidence. I'm a very confident person, but I wasn't as confident because I wasn't actually in the fashion design world. I wasn't paying that much attention to the fashion design world. I was doing
Hmm.
whatever I wanted. And I didn't have the pattern making skills that a lot of people had. Like I actually turns out had some more than some people. Actually, I was like, I know more about pattern making than you do.
Hmm.
But, I went into it thinking, I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I'm going to be like winging it. I mean, I practiced and I hired a teacher and I got 4 virtual private lessons. But yeah, I would have just loved to go into that being like, I went to fashion school. I know exactly what I'm doing. Oh, and like some of those people already had fashion lines, like just, I
Hmm.
wish if I'd gone into it now with the experience that I have now, it would be different. I
Yeah.
would have felt,
Yeah.
oh, well.
So, what would you say some of your biggest like takeaways from that whole Runway experience, like to like what you were just saying, like getting over maybe feeling inadequate or people were literally voting on your work. So, I mean, how did that impact you? Would that impact you the same way today? Not only because maybe you would feel more equipped, but because you've already gone through there and have, like what's your mindset now thinking, and not even just Project Runway, but you're in a world where everybody sees up close what you've done. And so, and I think it's amazing, but I'm just curious if there's on the other side of that, do you have moments where you're like, that hurt my feelings? Or are you like, I used to be like that and I learned this, like, so what were some of the takeaways from Project Runway or just from maybe that journey to where you are now?
I've always tried to not care what other people think, but as a oldest child type A person, it's really hard for me not to care what other people think. And I really had to have thick skin to go into the not just social media, but to the worldwide audience of Project Runway on
Mm-hmm.
TV because people are vicious online. And I thought that I'd already had some pretty terrible social media experiences with people trying to defame me and create lies about me. And I thought that I had a thick enough skin from that experience, but turns out it was still really hard when I already felt sometimes those challenges, I felt like, this isn't what I would have, if I'd had like enough sleep or my sketchbooks with me or my right frame of mind, that is not what I would have designed. But under the circumstances and the pressure and the time and everything, that's what I ended up with. So to not feel confident about something and then to
Mm-hmm.
have tear it apart online. There was a lot of stuff about calling me, she's so colorful like a clown. I'm like, is that really someone colorful is a clown? That's your only thing that you can think? Like, that's so sad.
Yeah.
That's what you think. If you're colorful, you're a clown. And I think on Reddit they just all decide to call me the same thing, and then they
Mm-hmm.
would Instagram and then call me a clown. And I just because my season Project Journey just got on Netflix. Like only 3 people have come to me with that rude clown comment, but mostly I get tons and tons and tons of really positive emails and little girls. I have this little fashion drawings, and a note from a girl in Canada, some
Oh.
8 or 9-year-old girl who just mailed me this and told me I was her hero. And
Oh
I
my
get a
gosh,
lot of
that's amazing.
but it is so easy. And it was so easy during when the show was airing to, instead of focusing on all the positive comments that were being said, focus in on the very negative comments that people were saying to me. And now that I don't know how many years it's been, almost 4 years, 3.5 years since that has happened, now those comments come at me and they don't have that effect. It was really hard in that moment because how I already felt like I had failed when I got kicked off the show, to not like listen to that. Then also being on the show, listening to my own voice versus listening to all the other voices. I usually don't listen to all the other voices, but I did get a little confused because the voices were coming from the judges or they were coming from Christian. And, I think I would go into it now a little more confident. Like, I know I've had people buy my stuff. I've heard what people have said, not just complimenting me on my own clothing, but on clothing that I've made for them. I know. And I think a lot of those other designers that were able to just like brush it off, I would see them not take it quite, some of them did, but some people were not taking it so to heart what was being said. And I was like, how are you doing that? But now I know because they've been selling clothing. They knew they had a clientele. They knew it was just a
Mm-hmm.
show. I was just like, this is, and for me also, that show to me meant whether I was going to become a fashion designer or not.
Mm-hmm.
And now it wouldn't have that meaning. I already am a fashion. So I
Right.
think I was giving it too much weight, like
Mm-hmm.
everything they said, like it was going to be all or nothing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. I mean, it's definitely, it's so easy to confuse our work with who we are, you know, like, well, I don't like your work, so therefore I don't like you. Well, no, they never said that, you know, or the work is, you know, pick an adjective, a negative adjective, and now that means it's you, you know, and it's like, no, that's not what they were saying. So, I mean, I think that's definitely an ongoing journey, especially like I said, for people in the creative space or somebody that's putting their work on the line and like, hey, you want what I have. Oh, you don't? Why don't you? You know, and all of a sudden the feedback is, you know, has the potential anyway to either ruin you or help you realize like, well, their opinion is their opinion and everybody's going to have one. And what am I going to do with that? You know, is it going to slow me down or is it going to help me, you know, feel more confident about what I felt good about before they said that, you know?
Yeah.
And like you said, under the circumstances too, it's like, well, you weren't in that time crunch. You weren't, you know, losing sleep. You weren't learning a new skill set, you know, in just a few hours. You weren't all the pressures. And so it's, yeah.
Yeah. And they also don't see, they actually, when you see an episode, you don't actually see everything that was said. So you don't really know everything that happened. But
Yeah.
and I think for me, the takeaway is for me a lot of times is that you have 20 positive comments and one bad comment, and all you focus on is the bad comment. And that's not helpful because there was 20 people that liked it. Or, you know, in my case, I feel like it's much bigger. It was just like a few bad, a whole bunch of good, but all I could think about was the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And not letting that and as a creative person or someone who's put their heart and soul into something, it can really deflate you. It can really feel like, well, maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was off base. But if you remember all these other people that actually really loved what you were doing, that's your client. Those other people aren't your client.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay that not everybody is your client or not everybody is for you or wants what you have. That's why there's all different people doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially the little girls who are writing you handwritten letters and drawings. That's so sweet.
Cute.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do your kids still wear your clothes?
They've grown out of what I did make them.
Well, for sure.
And over the years, it became like I would make something, I'd work all this time to make them something cute, and then they would wear it like one time, and then they wouldn't wear it. So I stopped sewing for them. I'm like, I'm done. I'm sewing for myself now.
Yes.
And now my girls are teenagers. They're like, could you make me this? Could you make me that? I'm like, actually, you know what? I have a business now. So nope, I actually don't have time to make things. I'll give you money to go buy something at the store. But I'm like, you had a chance for years. You didn't want to wear the stuff that I made you. So burn those bridges.
Well, soon enough, maybe they'll share yours if you're a sharing type of mom. I'm not quite a sharing mom yet. So
my oldest for a while, and when we lived in Japan, she was stealing my clothes all the time, which I was, you know, a little bit flattered by because I'm like, I don't know if I would have stolen my own mom's clothes. So that's pretty flattering. And my other daughter is 13 and she thinks that I'm so weird and, you know, she has a different style. So.
Right. That's so fun. Oh man. Okay. So kind of segueing into going up, maybe not worrying about what other people think, maybe going against the grain a little bit, you know, staying in your lane. I've really wanted to talk about the topic of the neutral trend of clothing in our, I don't know if it's our country or just our culture right now, especially for women, young women, middle-aged women, you know, our age, not going to define that. But neutral is the thing, you know, it's where white on white or cream on white, grays on beige, you know, everything is ivory. And while it's classy and pretty and you can add pops of color easily, and I get all of that, and I'm not anti-neutral. So anybody who's wearing neutral and you're listening to this, I am not hating on your style. I have plenty of neutral things in my own closet. But for you, Katie, who just had, I mean, your line is just so vibrant. It's so colorful. It's so life-giving. How do you, well, let's start with, how do you feel about the neutral trend? I've seen some of your posts, so I don't want to quote things you've said, but we'll start with, how do you feel about the neutral trend, and maybe how does that impact, or does it impact how you create what you create, or is it just kind of open up a whole new lane for you? I mean, you don't really have to try to stand out. I mean, you show up and you're different. So kind of cover all of that. Tell me your thoughts on all of that.
So when I started designing clothing for myself, it was because I couldn't find the kind of clothing I wanted at the stores. It was really hard. Now things are even more neutral for sure. But since I became an adult, I felt like there was very little color options except for in the spring and summer. All of
Right.
a sudden you would get some color. And I was just like, even when I would go to the fabric store, a lot of times the options, I'm like, could you have more color? Like maybe you'd have like colorful knits, but not so much like pant fabric and stuff. But anyway, so I started sewing for that reason, to give more color to my own wardrobe. And then I started, I told you guys, I said earlier that I was teaching these how to wear color classes because I would get these comments from women saying like, oh, I love that. I don't know how to put colors together, or I don't know how to wear that, or you're so brave to wear those colors. And, comments where I was like, oh, really? Like it didn't occur to me. I mean, maybe a little bit because I was self-aware that like I am standing out by wearing these colors. And so a little bit of me would sometimes be like, well, this is what I really want to wear, but is that too crazy? Like I did think that a little bit, and I would just go with it and wear it anyway. And then find out like, oh, it wasn't that scary to wear these colors out, but I started to notice that a lot of people said they were scared of color, or didn't know how to wear color, or didn't know how to put colors together, which is why I wrote the book, my little guidebook that I put out, a little PDF. It was called Wear Happy Color.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing a challenge, a monthly, every March I was doing this challenge to get people to wear color. And I was teaching them about the color wheel and color schemes, how to wear color. And the more I started to like really focus in on wearing color and teaching others about color, I started to notice how little color people were wearing. And then moving to Japan, which everyone thinks is super colorful, it's actually way less colorful. It is very neutral. Like
Wow.
my eyes in Japan, I was like, oh, I'd go into the stores and they have the coolest clothing, but literally everything is khaki, white, navy, or black or gray.
Wow.
Like you don't see color. And occasionally you do, and it's on sale for really cheap because nobody's buying it. So I would just buy it all, But I don't know. I felt like it was my mission to help women feel confident wearing color and to not be scared of it. And I also thought, and I put this in my little guidebook that I had written, that when you're young, you're not scared of color. Like you just wear whatever colors. You're not worried if it looks good on you, if it's like right with your skin tone. You're not thinking about any of that. You're not worried if it's like too crazy. You're just wearing color because you love it. My son's favorite color is orange. He loves to wear all orange outfits.
Yep.
He is not worried about anything. And as you get older and you start to realize that people are going to have an opinion or they say something, that's when you start to pull back. I remember in ninth grade, and I went to art school, as we mentioned earlier, but I remember in ninth grade, I had bought these vintage orange Levi overalls at a thrift store in Gainesville. And I was so excited to wear them to school. And I'm like, these are so cool. And some boys called me some stupid comment, like, I don't know what it was, but they made fun of me. And I never wore those orange overalls again. And I regret it because they were so cool and I wish I had them. But I think that happens to everyone at some point, which makes them pull back from color. And now at this point, we're like, and I think because of Instagram and social media, honestly, perpetuating this like no color in your house, which it is also beautiful. I really actually like the neutral houses, but no color in your wardrobe, no color in your house, and it just keeps perpetuating itself. Like, ooh, well, she looks pretty in that. I want to look like that. I'm going to wear that. And not knowing what else to do and not having a lot of other options at the stores.
Right.
So, I wish people would become more confident in color. And I do see this movement where people are learning what their colors are, for their skin color and their eye tone and their eyes and stuff. And so I think that might help people learn how to wear color and be a little more confident in color. And actually, I am currently in the process of writing a book that will be published in like a year and a half or something. And it is about both topics where I'm showing people what colors look good on them, which I've had to do a lot of research about because that came naturally to me. I've never done that for people. Just for myself, like knowing what colors look good on me. But I have part of it's going to be about teaching people what colors to wear. And then the other part is like, you can either take that information and say, I don't really care. I want to wear the colors I want to wear. And let me show you how to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can take that information and let me tell you how to put it with the other colors that you love. How can we combine those in an outfit? Because wearing color brings joy. And though wearing neutrals, you might feel sophisticated and you might feel nice and, whatever. There is something about wearing bright color that just lifts your mood and brings joy. And it's not just me saying that. Every year when I do that challenge, people send me messages and tell me that same thing. I had no idea. It made me feel so happy all day. I got all all these compliments, just like they tell me all this stuff and I'm like, I knew it. Like it does, it brings joy. And it's not joyful to wear something else, but this does bring joy.
Yes.
So why not try this too? So, and I just recently bought a couple neutrals, and I have not bought neutrals in years because I was like, trying to go the other direction.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, these are kind of pretty. This is kind of weird to wear these neutrals. Like it's weird for me now, but I'm like, this is kind of fun trying this whole thing out. But I've still been combining.
You're
them
so rebellious to wear a white.
Someone was like, it's like face.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's like a tan shirt and like a burnt sienna shirt, but they're just like not, I wasn't buying muted colors for. I was like, no, only bright colors.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, like this, for an example, like as you're talking, I'm like, that's so true. Like this pink tank top I'm wearing is one of my favorite tops. And I get so many compliments when I wear it and they're like, it's so bright and so happy. And I love wearing it specifically like in the wintertime, like with a jacket or something, because it's so rare to see bright colors in the wintertime, especially.
It's the opposite of what we should be doing.
I know.
It is very outside. There's no leaves on the trees. It's brown. It's gray. It's muddy. It's whatever. Mm-hmm. And then we're dressing the same way. Why?
We all look like black mobs walking around in this dark, dreary world. And I'm like, where's the yellow on our closets right now? Yes.
We need color in the winter, most especially for your own self and how you feel and for other people's eyes. Like I like to see some color. Like I've noticed your shirt the entire time we're talking. Really cute. I love that color. And the little flutter sleeve is cute.
Thanks.
Anyway.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, so would you say that neutral is maybe being safe? That's what I was looking for. So like if we just stay in the safe zone, we won't get negative feedback. We won't get commentary that like, oh, that color does not work with your hair color or your skin tone. So it's like we better not get any feedback. I'd rather just be in this little safe space. Yeah.
Like you're just blending in, which I always say, like, are you trying in Japan? I was like, are you trying to blend in with the concrete buildings and the sidewalks and the roads? Because that's what you're doing. You're just blending in with the, urban environment. So I feel like wearing all neutrals, you're not going to stand out, but you're also not going to like nothing. It's just a nothing. You're just blending in. And I think that's what a lot of people are kind of trying to do. Like maybe nobody will notice me or say anything or,
Yeah. And so, I mean, just throwing out the question, for myself, for everybody listening. So is that what our goal is? Are we like just subconsciously like you said, like the pressure that we feel that we're internalizing that we're not even really aware of? Are we all just showing up every day hoping to not make a ripple or not make, potentially get in a conversation or in a situation even online where somebody's going to give us negative commentary? So are we even aware that we are, just kind of disappearing or just kind of existing versus like, here I am, this is my color, this is, how I want to show up today. And also for you, like you just said, I mean, people love to see color as much as the person wearing it would benefit, it brings joy to everybody around. And so obviously there's all kinds of ways to bring joy in your life. Wearing color is not the only way, but obviously for this conversation, just if anything, I would just hope, and I'm totally saying this to myself because I have a ton of neutral stuff in my closet. I do not wear as bold of colors as you do on a daily basis. But when I do, I feel really excited about it. So, but I would regret not asking the question on this episode of, are we just trying to show up to be safe in our appearance and hold back from the way we really want to come across, or hold back from a potential interaction with somebody during the day that could really turn into something great? I mean, any conversation we can lead into a great conversation. And so, I don't know if I'm really saying that as succinctly as I want to, but
I think that's perfect.
Just challenging us all with, as the seasons are changing, but just year round, just finding things that bring you joy and realizing that it's probably going to bring other people joy too, and not feeling like you've got to stay stuck or stay hidden or stay small. I mean, that's like, oh, don't live small, don't play small, don't show up small, don't show up trying to hide. We all need what everybody has. And so even if it's just a bright colored shirt that day, if you're the only one in the room that felt confident enough to put on that shirt. We all needed that. We all needed to know that you showed up confident today, and maybe tomorrow it'll be our turn. But
I've also had these comments my whole life where, because I wear a lot of color, but I also am a very open book, and I give a lot of information about the struggles of my life, the goods, the bads. And so for both of these reasons, I think people will sometimes tell me like, thank you for being authentic and for being yourself, because it helped me know that I could also be myself.
Yeah.
And I think when you do that, and it might be you might feel uncomfortable at first, like being that way or wearing that thing or whatever, but just know that it's affecting somebody else in that room, and it'll get easier for you, but it'll also help other people be themselves and be expressive or take a chance, or not be so scared. So I get that comment a lot, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even mean to be helping other people, but it does. It helps other people to be yourself and to not pretend to be something else or hide your light under a bushel, like that whole.
Right. Yeah. I love that. And that was, I mean, you literally answered what I kind of wonder beyond your clothing. How does the colorful life, the bold life, how does that translate into your overall life? And I mean, you just answered that exactly. I mean, just showing up as your true self and also making it easier for other people to show up as their true self. Like you give them permission to show up because you've chosen to show up as your true self. Yeah. I love that. That's amazing. Okay. So you mentioned your book that's coming out. I know it's not like next month, but we will talk again and we can, let everybody know when it is coming out. And that's amazing. I will be looking for that because I am kind of that rebellious person. Like, well, I don't really care if it's not my color. I still really like it. So help me wear it well. I will find that chapter or chapters. Yeah. Okay. So tell us how we can keep up with you, how we can find all of your things, how we can find your dances and your takes on your neutral add-ons to your closet. Where can we find all your things?
Well, I wish I was still dancing as much, but running a business, I'm like, I'm not dancing as much as I used to. But yeah, so you can find me at Katie Kortman Art on Instagram, and also Katie Kortman Clothing. So the clothing is just purely my clothing line. Katie Kortman Art is everything. And you can find me at katiekortman.com. And on there, I have links to where to buy my fabric and the clothing and all this thing.
Perfect. And you can sign up for your newsletter.
Yep. I have a newsletter on there and text and all that.
Yep. I love that. So I'll have all of that in the show notes for everybody listening. And like I said, we'll keep an eye out for your book coming out. Anything else that you want to share with our listeners, just in terms of, following that dream, however it might look, whatever the logistics and the obstacles you have to find, just kind of staying true to your lane. You're nowhere near your finish line. So I'm not trying to say like that. You're in the midst of like the next roller coaster, I feel like, you're that's just life. And so, as I think most people listening, we're like, okay, well, we are on the uphill or we are in the steep fly down, and I know it's about to get hard again. So maybe some closing thoughts on just that journey and embracing it all and not getting weary or worrying what other people are thinking.
Yeah, I think just knowing that also, I just want to say, like, every point of your life is not always the right time to make a big thing happen. And there will be times where you have more time and more ability to make something happen, and times where your family comes first or something else is, taking up your time. And that's okay. But when those opportunities arrive, and, if you continue to just, even in some way, work towards whatever dreams you have or whatever it is, that little itch that you have that you want to scratch, whatever that is. But if you always just keep with it, even in a small way, then when that time comes that you have an opportunity, that you can just grab it and take it. And don't be scared to say yes to something that you're not fully sure you can do yet, because it'll just force you to do it. And just taking those opportunities, I think, is key. I mean, some people will just say, no, I'm not ready for that yet. But will that opportunity come again when they are ready? You never know. So grab the bull by the horns and see what you can do.
Yeah.
And the worst you can do is fail, but at least you tried. And, like the other option is that you never tried and you never even found out if you could do it. So
yeah. And you'll always learn something along the way. You probably learn more when you fail. That's what I have found anyway.
You learn a lot from failure, as they say.
Yeah. I love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your insight, your enthusiasm, your bold, colorful ideas with all of us. But yes, we thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We could definitely keep talking. And
So fun. Thank you.
yes, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for listening, and we will talk again soon. Hey, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Before you go, it would mean the world to me and my family if you would share this episode with at least one person who you think might benefit from this message. And of course, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. You can also follow me at Ashlee Ilg on Instagram to keep up with our adventures and for continued encouragement as you pursue your big ideas. Thanks again for joining us. Until next time.